get into the diodes. الانتجرال عادة for a signal or a sine wave or a periodic signal, whether it is centered at zero، يعني هاي أول signal، إذا اعتبرنا هيدا هو time axis t and this is my v. In this case, v is equal, let us say, to a times sine omega t. And we can also draw another signal which is which has a DC shift V1, okay, and sorry لأنه عم بكتب على الإدج V1, and this V1 might be a small signal centered around DC, so V1 is going to be equal to some V1 DC plus B sine omega t. إذا عندهم البيريد أو الأوميجا تكون أوميجا 1 مختلفة عن الأوميجا 2. Okay, if we look at those two signals, they are periodic signals. Yes, حدا عنده سؤال? Okay. If we look at those two signals, typically we find the average, okay, is the integral for a given time signal over the period 0 to t of my v of t dt. Okay. هلا الsimple sinusoid يلي ما عنده DC shift يلي عم باخده fully over its period، هتكون البيريد لإله هي من هون لهون هيدا، وهيدا البيريد لأنه الأوميجا اللي لإله مختلفة this is its period. okay. طيب هلا for V if I want to find its average, for V the average of the voltage signal هو 1 على t integral بين 0 and t of a sine omega t. What is the integral? It's the area under the curve. It is sensitive to positive or negative, right? يعني الانتجرال للV إذا أنا بدي أطلعه it is going to be the area under the curve here and here. Are those two areas equal and opposite in sign? شو بيطلع الانتجرال للساين؟
Yes, sure.
شو بيطلع الانتجرال للساين؟
زيرو.
زيرو. Okay. هلا the blue one, the blue curve, it has a DC shift, right? So for the blue curve, how do we handle this? So for V1, I'm going to say 1 على T1 integral between 0 and T1 of the two components. V1 DC plus B sine omega T. الانتجرال فيني أقسمه لاثنين. Okay. So هاي بتصير V1 DC plus 1 على T1 integral of between 0 and t of b sine omega t. Okay. هيدا الكومبوننت حيكون 0. مين بيبقى عندي؟ DC component بيطلع V1 DC. Okay. So هيدي لأنه أخذنا الانتجريشن over the whole boundary، يعني أخذنا الانتجريشن من 0 ل t. هلا بيمرق معنا ل T1. هلا بيمرق معنا integration incomplete, not over the whole period. So in the homework, okay, what I wanted to come to is that in the homework we tell you that we have a signal with zero average. شو يعني signal with zero average؟ عندها DC أو أداة DC شو هو؟ shift؟
زيرو.
زيرو. So we mean that the DC shift is zero for the signal. Okay. حدا عنده سؤال على هالأشياء أو you can remember them, right? Anybody has questions? Yes.
أنا عندي سؤال صغير. شفت somewhere إنه لبس نعمل ال average voltage we just have to multiply by 2 over pi. فاستعملتها
هيدي بعد ما شرحناها هاي.
ما بعرف استعملتها تلاقي إنه ما كنت حتى إنه مذكر شو ال average ففتشت وطلعت لي هاي definition.
Okay, there are two things. We will explain to you the average current later, and when we start to talk about pi هلا حنقطع فيها بعد شوي. We are moving from the time domain to the frequency domain أو to the theta domain, to the phase domain. شو هي relation نحن لما إياها بين time وال frequency? What is omega?
2 pi over f over t.
2 pi f صح؟
Yes, 2 pi f 2 pi over t.
اوكي طب هلا احسن حاشرحها انا من هلا. سو انا لما عم بكون عم بعمل افريج لسيجنال اللي هو 1 على t integral between 0 and t of sine omega t or over a certain amount of time, not necessarily up to t. How do I write this dt? What is the relation? شو بعمل إذا بدي أقلبها مثلا لتصير sine ثيتا. we say let ثيتا equal omega t. ساعتها دي ثيتا شو بتساوي؟ What is omega? 2 باي على t
2 باي over t.
dt. صح؟ يعني هيدا الكونستنت اللي حينقلني بين التو variables, right? So if I want to do a change of variable, شو بصير هيدا الانتجرال هلا اذا بدي اعمل change of variable؟ هاي محل الاوميجا تي ححط محل اوميجا تي ححط ثيتا، محل الدي تي حاجي احط هاي الكوانتيتي. what is dt؟
T over 2 pi.
t over 2 pi times d theta, right? So I'm going to substitute this quantity here and I'm going to substitute theta here, right? هي الثيتا بتطلع لهونيك والدي تي بتطلع لهونيك، صح؟ طيب وشو بعد عندي بدي اغير بالباوندز؟
مش بدنا نغير بس الاكسبريشن تبعتي نحطه something else.
exactly. so بدي اغير الباوندز، يعني حيصير الانتجرال عندي هلا حتطلع 1 على تي الدي ثيتا هيدي الكوانتيتي حتطلع لي constant لبرا تي على 2 باي right which will cancel out times the integral. إذا التايم عم يتغير بين 0 و t الثيتا will vary between what and what and then sin theta d theta, right? لأنه I already substituted theta here and d theta وطلعت الكونستنت لبرا اللي لها. اوكي يعني this component here هيدي الدي تي هي عبارة عن t على 2 باي ضرب d theta, right? Now the zero, if t equal to 0 then theta is equal to what? Equal omega t when t is 0. So this will be 0. And then theta 1 and theta 2 هي omega t لما t بتساوي big T. So هاي حتكون 2 باي على big T ضرب big T تطلع شو بتساوي؟ 2 باي. So بصير الباوند بين theta 1 and theta 2 بصير عنا اياه 2 باي. يعني أنا عندي هيدي theta 2 باوند اللي هو 2 باي ححطه هون وعندنا الثيتا 1 باوند حيكون 0 وهيدا عم نطلعها من هون هيك. اوكي is this clear؟ sorry
yes. So if we used it in the homework ما بيأثر معك مش انه غلط او شيء.
إذا استعملت الثيتا equation it is fine, it is fine. بس إنه يعني you're just integrating, right? So integral of the sign between 0 and 2 pi. اوكي
مظبوط بس انا ما حتى يعني استعملت انتجرال يعني دغري كتبت انه times 2 over pi يعني
هو حيطلع الافريج depending on what the average is, right? But if we tell you a signal has a zero average, this means that it does not have a DC shift لأنه بس في عندها sinusoidal component يلي over the period the integral will be zero. Okay? كلكم got refreshed on this topic؟ لأنه شوي حنعوز الانتجرالز هلا حنعوزهم مع الفاينل answer. Yes please go ahead.
هلا بالهومورك نحن we only used the idea of an average sine wave to find
Exactly. Now we're
بس
going
to find
to need this integral and the explanation later, but I wanted to make sure you are comfortable with the homework first.
اوكي انا شوي شكيت بحالي لانه ما استعملت
Okay.
الانتجرال بالهومورك
No,
لانه
no, don't worry. But I want to refresh you. I said this is a refresher on integrals. Okay, so this is a refresher. Yes, please, can you repeat?
When do we say that Pn is equal 0 and suppose PDC equal P out plus P lost?
Okay, so you are asking me now about the power, right?
Yes.
So typically, if my input signal Vn, let us say, is 0.01 sine omega t, the VDC is around 9 volt times 1, well, current is 1 milliamp, right? This is 9 milliwatts. and let us say that the gain is 10, okay, and so therefore this means that V out is equal to 0.1 sine omega t, right? So بلش يصير في عندي فرق، يعني أنا إذا عم حط PO على PDC plus PN, okay, this is very small compared to PDC, right? So compared to PDC, so I can ignore it. Okay, so على الانput side, typically we ignore the input power لأنه DC أكبر منها حتكون، يعني هيدا supply 9 volt بينما السيجنال is 10 millivolt amplitude, right? So typically we ignore the PN. بس ال P out مجبورين فيها لأنه نحن بدنا نعرف قد ايه الefficiency للسيستم. أكيد we have to keep it. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay? طيب great. طيب هلا we will start where we stopped last time. So حنرجع نبلش بالexplanation للدايودز. And in the explanation for the diodes, we took the example where I had a 10 volt source, I had a resistor, and I had the diode opposing the current flow. And we said that this is an ideal diode. بعدين حنطلع كيف يبطل ideal الموديل. That the first thing we will do is that we are going to assume off, and we will draw the 1K ohm. We will put the 10 volts. Okay, وحطينا هيدي plus or minus 10. And what we did is we said we will do the diode as an open circuit, and we agreed that we are going, if I have plus or minus V for the diode, the plus will be on the anode على طول والcurrent هو باتجاه diode. So I will keep the I like this, and I will keep here plus or minus V. Okay, هلا if we do a loop of KVL, okay, it will be minus 10 plus VR, the voltage across the resistor is VR, minus V diode is equal to 0, okay, and since the current that is flowing in the resistor, يعني IR, what is IR here? إذا رسمت IR, IR is equal to minus I of the diode is equal to 0. So this is plus 0 minus V equals 0. Therefore, V equal minus 10, and it is negative. And this tells me that my assumption is correct. لأن نحن اتفقنا إنه we set I to 0, then we solve, then we check for the assumption is a V diode is negative. Okay, so first we set I diode to 0, then we set I diode to 0, and then we solve, and then we check if the V diode is negative, which is correct. Now what if حدا عنده سؤال على هيدا الاسsumption? Is it clear?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, great. Now, what if I took the wrong assumption? Okay, so what if I took the wrong assumption? What is going to happen to my solution? يعني رح أقول assume it is on. Okay, so حنبلش. Okay, so we are going to start with equivalent circuit. This is opposing, so I am going to, the main thing, ما تغلطوا, don't do this mistake. على طول هيدا ال I direction, and this is the plus or minus V of the diode. So now if I want to draw the equivalent circuit with the assumption on, I will have a 1K here. This is the plus or minus 10. This is the grounded. And then I will have a short here. وكيف حيكون الدايركشن للI؟ مثل ما كنا رسمينه. So I will be upward and this will be plus or minus V. Under this assumption, okay, Under this assumption, لأني أنا I assumed it on, I'm going to follow the procedure. So I'm going to set V equal to 0. I am going to solve, and then I am going to check if what? If I is positive. Okay. طب حطينا V equal to 0. شو كيف قال هون عنا إياها؟ minus 10. صح. If I go
plus
in this loop.
1000 I0.
Okay. ال I, شو ال IR in terms of the I diode؟ plus VR بعدها VR. صح؟ equal
Yes.
to 0. صح؟ لأنه هيدي plus 0 right؟ plus VR يعني إذا هيدا ال voltage across the resistor.
What about the resistor after?
إيه بس دي أي. خلينا بس clear it حتى يكون عندنا مجال نكتب لكم هيدا resistor. Okay. So this is a plus VR. Okay. And what is this plus V or minus V of the diode, right? Minus V of the diode is equal to 0. So this is minus 10. What is VR? IR times R minus 0 equals 0. What is IR?
Minus I.
Exactly. So IR, okay, not in this color. So IR in this example is equal to minus I. But IR is equal to minus I. So I'm going to plug it in here and say that minus 10 minus I times 1K is equal to 0. شو بتطلع معي ال I؟
Negative.
minus 10 على 1K. Okay, so in this case, I did not meet my criteria. Okay, this is negative, so I did not meet my criteria. Okay, did not meet. Check. Okay, is this clear؟ لما أخذنا wrong assumption شو صار؟ صحيح أنا حطيتها short circuit. شو اللي بهم بكل هالسؤال؟ What is most important؟
Is the current positive or negative?
Exactly, that we kept the direction of the current like the direction of the diode. ولهيك I verified وطلع معي الجواب إنه غلط. لأن أنا if I did not adhere to the right diode direction, I may have falsely thought that my solution is correct. Okay? So we check if I is positive and we have to adhere to the direction of the diode. Anyone has a question? All clear? طب. Okay. هناخد another example now about the diode and then we will go into some interesting functions of the diode. So I will go a little bit out of sequence لأنه بعتقد هذا example is relevant to what we are doing now. And let us look at this example circuit. So I have two diodes this time. Okay, so I have ground. I have a diode V1, and then I have here a diode V2. I have a resistor of 10 kilo ohms and a supply of 10 volts. Okay, and then I have a resistor of 5 kilo ohms and I have a supply here of minus 10 volts. Okay, and the diode, okay, the diode across the voltage across the diode, let us label them. So هيدي الدايود عندها plus minus V2 and the current is I2 and this has plus minus V1 and the current going through it is I1. Okay, and we're asked, we are told that the diodes are ideal يعني هو ال behavior that we know, so assume diodes are ideal, which is what we have learned so far. يعني يا open يا short circuit, and they are asking us to find two quantities يلي هن they label here the current I and the voltage V between this node and the ground. Okay, so they are asking us to find I and V. Okay, so we have to start to guess how are those diodes operating, what combination I have, how many combinations I can have, how many diodes do I have behind this circuit.
2 diodes.
عندي 2 diodes يعني كم region؟ كم possible combination of operation mode عندي؟
4.
4 لأنه each one يعني D1 فيها تكون on or off، نفس الشيء D2 فيها تكون on or off. So I have 4 possible regions. Do I have to try them all or can I make an intelligent guess? خلينا نشوف. Let us start by guessing. So let us guess a possible region first. If it doesn't work, we have to iterate it through the others. Okay? هات لنشوف كيف الفولتجز، كيف معقول الكرنت يكون ماشي بهالسيركت. هيدي is positive، هيدي is negative، وهيدي is zero وهي is negative. يعني بهيدا الريزستور هون كيف حيكون الكرنت flow most probably؟ إذا اعتبرنا الدايودز مش موجودين. Ignore the diodes. What do you think?
Towards the -10 voltage.
Towards the -10. So we expect that there will be current coming from the positive or the ground to the -10, right? طيب يعني can I safely for sure say that D2 is on؟ لأنه على الأنود اللي لها عندها أعلى voltage صح؟ عندها 10 فولت right؟ طيب وال D1 probably it is on unless this resistor creates a different voltage يعني كvoltage division أوطى من 10 صح؟ بس أنا إذا جيت رسمت هيك أوكي لو اعتبرناها short يعني most probably فيني let us start with the guess that حتى ما ضيعكم كتير. Let us start with the guess that for sure D1 is on and I am going to also assume D2 is on. So assume D1, D2 both on and we will solve. Okay? So حدا عنده شك ليش D1 D2 معقول تكون on؟
No.
Okay, لأنها موصولة بال10. With D1 we are guessing, assuming that the voltage division plays to our favor, that it is going to also have a current that is flowing downward to the lower voltage. Okay? طيب great. يعني هلا أنا إذا بدي أرجع أرسمه للسيركت, I am going to draw it like this. I'm going to draw. I have here ground. Okay, so let me بس zoom it in حتى تشوفوا كيف عم نرسمها. So هيدي ground. هيدي محل D1. Okay, and this is here. And this is the resistor. هون ححط minus plus 10 volts. Okay, this is D2 wherever it is. هلا بنعبيها short circuit بس لنعمل zoom out. And this is the resistor. And this is minus plus 10 volts لأنه negative. Okay, هيدا 5K وهيدا 10K. So now if we zoom out, okay, ححط إذا أنا I assume both on, I'm going to place in place of diode 1 a short circuit and in place of diode 2 a short circuit. The direction of I1 is going down and the direction of I2 is also going down. Okay? So, what do I do? فإذا to follow the three-step procedure, number 1, we are going to set V of diode 1 to 0 and V of diode 2 to 0. Number 2, we are going to solve. And then number 3, we are going to check if what, إذا ما قدتنا هاي نكتبها على غيرها. We are going to check if, what do we want to check بهالحالة؟
I1 I2 أكبر من 0.
إذا I1 أكبر من 0 and I2 أكبر من 0. Right? Exactly. So بدي أتأكد من التو diodes لأني أنا قلتهم on. Okay? So in order to solve, هلا أول شيء بلاحظوا بهيدا السيركت. What do I notice in this circuit? What is this node? شو هيدي هي عندكم ground ولا supply? This is ground, right? The green one, which I just labeled. So what is the
okay.
voltage at this node?
0.
0.
صار هيدا 0 هون، صح؟ فيني can I solve for what I2 is? Can I solve what is I2?
Doctor,
Yes,
we are
we
not
can.
hearing well.
Yes, your voice
Can I
is
solve what is
loud.
I2? Can you hear me now?
هلا
Yes,
سامعينك
yes.
دكتور.
Okay. What
هلا
is
نقدر نعمل
I2?
KVL نو؟
بس من أي باس بحللها للI2؟
من ال right half.
يعني أنا I know this voltage here, right? This is 10 volts, right? So 10 minus 0 صح؟ على 10k is equal to what? I2,
is equal
right?
to I2.
لأنه هيدي هي ال IR, right? So I2 بتساوي بتطلع عنا 1 milliamp, right? أوكي. طيب حدا عنده سؤال كيف طلعنا I2؟ لأنه this is equal to IR. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
بس دكتور هلا نحن بيهمنا إنه it's positive, right؟ بيهمناش قد إيه الفاليو تبعتها.
مهمنا positive بس هلا أنا بدي الفاليو اللي لها ليه؟ فبدي حل I1. I need to find what I1 is also, right? So how can I find I1?
We know that the voltage. I think we can do KVL for the left half. Since we have a 10 volts and a 5.
انتبهوا, be careful that I is not falling. It's falling between a 0 and a 0 in this case, right?
We need the resistor إذا ما نعمل KVL صح؟
إيه. So voltage is 0, so I cannot know لأنه 0 ضرب يعني I ضرب 0 resistor حتطلع 0 ما حقدر أحذرها.
يعني هلا ما نعمل KCL على النود
طلعوا إيه
0.
على هيدي النود شو عندي information. خلينا نسمي هيدي I5. Okay, what is the relation that I have here?
Put 0 minus 10
By
or 0 minus
KCL.
minus 10.
Exactly. So by KCL, I know that I1 plus I2 equal I5. صح؟ يعني I2 فيني طلعها as I5 minus I1. عفوا بس يعني I1 فيني طلعها as okay. يعني I1 فيني طلعها as I5 minus I2. معي ال I2 من فوق. بعد بدي طلع مين؟ I5. Okay. So هلا as your friend just said, أنا إذا بدي طلع ال I5 هي V على R, يعني هي 0 minus 10 على 5K. Okay, and this solution comes from هيدا resistor, صح؟ هون على هاي النقطة عندي minus 10 وهون عندي 0. Okay, and I have the resistor, so it is 0 minus 10 على 5K, and in this scenario this is equal to 2 milliamp if I calculate it, صح? Okay, therefore what is the value of I1? 2 minus 1, which is 1 milliamp. Is this clear?
So how can it be possible that there is a current between في شي voltage difference between the two nodes هدول؟
لأنه we assumed an ideal scenario. Okay, and we said let us assume that the diode is a short circuit. But then the short circuit compensated for the difference in the current between the two branches. I agree with you in reality and this is not plausible. مش كتير يعني بتصير. بس هلا we are just following the rules of the circuit theory. Okay, لأنه بالنهاية all three grounds are one node, right? So really يعني let us just follow the circuit theory rules, okay? But you agree that the way to solve for I1 is by solving for KCL at the intermediate node, right? And this diode is not RDL. بعدين بنصير نشوف إنه هي it fits into a certain circuit اللي هو R voltage source. We replace it by a resistor, and in some case a DC shift when it is on, or by a simple DC shift. And even the application itself, إنه ليه بدي أحط diode بين ground و negative voltage. هلا we put the diode sometimes to protect against large currents or to protect against discharging a battery. هلا حنشوف battery example. But here it's a hypothetical circuit, okay? And just to practice our solving skills. Okay? حدا عنده سؤال how we solve this? Okay.
That's clear.
Okay, thank you. And therefore we check. So yes, I1 is positive and I2 is positive, and therefore we accept our assumption. Okay, we accept the solution that we came up with. Okay, طيب excellent. طيب هلا رح نجي نشوف a practical application of the diode. So let us look at a simple practical application. We are just going to sketch it هيك. أول شيء حنبلش فيها as a sketch and then we'll get into its theory. So there is something called the diode rectifier. هلا in a little bit we will explain to you the flow where all of these signals occur. بس حأعطيكم هيك a look ahead. When they send the signal from the electricity company to the house, this is a sinusoidal signal, right? And then eventually, do you know this little adapter مثلا that converts to DC بيكونوا حاطين عليه 9 volt, 5 volts to feed a DC supply to the chip or to feed a DC supply to charge the phone. Okay, so this takes a sinusoidal signal, and the sinusoidal signal that is inputted, somehow we try to create an envelope for it. يعني بنرجع مثلا نعمل لها مثل kind of reflection, okay, and then we try to trace the peaks, and this trace peak becomes like this, and then we bring something that does line regulation بتصير السيجنال DC. Okay, so عم نروح من ال AC أو small signal لعند ال DC. So all of these steps في specific circuits that are diodes that are going to help us achieve this. So أول step منها هو diode rectifier circuit. Let us look rectifier interface, right? So the diode rectifier circuit helps us fix a sinusoidal signal and start to give it some average. يعني what is DC? The DC has average. The sinusoid doesn't have an average, right? So the moment I start to give my signal an average, معناته أنا عم بلش حولها to DC. So let us assume that we have this circuit here, which is Vn. It's a signal. This is the total signal Vn. This is the positive terminal. I have a diode here, and I have a resistor R. Okay, and I am collecting or using the voltage across R. My output is the voltage across R. Okay, now let us draw the signal for Vn. Vn supplies me a pure sinusoidal signal. Okay, and this pure sinusoidal signal is acting this way as function of time t. Okay, where it has a period t which is equal 2 pi over omega, or omega equal 2 pi over t. Okay, so let us start to look at the assumptions or how إذا VN عم يتغير يعني VN مرة حيكون positive ومرة حيكون negative. So let us start by checking together إنه if VN is positive وين عم تجي البوزيتيف سيجنال؟ على الانود عم بيكون عندي بوزيتيف رايت، يعني إذا ال VN أخذ الفاليو بلس 3 وهي كانت بلس 3 هون will the diode be on or off؟ Will it be conducting or off? What will the diode be?
It will be on.
It will be
It
on.
will be on.
Okay, so the diode will be conducting and it will be on. Okay, so it will act as a short circuit. صح؟ So what is V out in terms of VN? إذا هيدي صارت short بهالحالة. Okay, what is V out in terms of VN?
It will be equal to Vn.
It's equal to VN. Okay, يعني بكل هالسكشن يلي ال VN positive ال V out عم تكون فيها شو؟ مثلها لحقتها صح؟ طيب great. Is this clear؟ حدا عنده سؤال عليها؟ طيب. Now when Vn is negative minus 3 or any negative value هون شو حيطلع معي ال V out؟ Let us see.
Zero.
So if
Open circuit.
Vn is negative أول شيء الدايود شو حيكون وضعه؟
It will be off.
It will be off. So the diode sorry خدناها مرتين will be off. Okay, will be off يعني not conducting. It will block the current and we will model it by open circuit. صح؟ طيب the diode will be off. It will block the current يعني قد ايه الكرنت القاطع بالار؟ What is the
Zero.
current I flowing here?
It will be
يعني
zero.
IR is zero يعني what is V out؟ هو
Also zero.
IR ضرب الR يعني zero. Okay, so what is V out going to be here? It's going to be equal to zero. Okay, so my V out حارسمه بالبلو ليضل blue is going to be equal to zero. Okay, therefore يعني V out عم نطلعها من two sections VO equal VN and VO equal to zero. Clear؟ طيب وبالأذر سايكلز شو حيصير عندي؟ كيف حتكفي ال V out؟ لما ال VN positive حتلحقها، لما ال VN negative zero، لما ال VN positive. Now this is called rectified لأنه قلبناه على ميلة وحدة one sided. Does this have an average value؟ أول شيء الانبوت شو كان الافرج اللي لإله؟
Zero.
Zero. الأوتبوت is the average zero؟
No.
ليش؟ لأنه الافرج للأوتبوت هو الاريا under the curve and it's always positive. So ما في شيء عم بكنسل شيء. Let us see what is the average for the output. So the first thing that we are going to solve for is we are going to solve for the average value of VO of T. هيك مسمينها rectified لأنه بلش يصير في عندها average. So we want to solve for the average value of VO of T, and this, for me, this represents the DC voltage in VO. يعني بلش ال VO يصير في عنده DC أو average quantity. Okay, so this means when I calculate it, I'm looking for the DC voltage in the VO. Okay, and this is equal to 1 over T integral between 0 and T of VO of T. So this is equal 1 over T integral between 0. كيف مقسم ال VO of T؟ هيدي T هون وهيدي T over 2. Right? So بين 0 t over 2 عندي quantity وعندي 1 over t integral between t over 2 and t. هيدي دي t بين t over 2 t قديش ال v out؟
0.
0 طار هالسكشن كله. وبين 0 and t over 2 what is the expression for v out؟
will be Vn.
Vn.
Sine? لا.
Exactly. So it's equal to the sign expression. So let us assume that we told you that Vn is equal to Vp sine omega t. ساعتها I can use this expression اللي هو Vp sine omega t اللي هو مثل ال Vn. Right? Okay. So let us now look how we reduce this expression. So this is equal. This quantity comes out to be 0 and I can ignore it from here on. So this is equal the 1 على t integral between 0 and t over 2 Vp sine omega t. حولنا إياها to the theta domain لأنه أهون إننا نعمل integration بالثeta. It is easier for us. So change of variable هنعمل change of variable هنقول let d set let theta equal omega t مثل ما شرحنا قبل. d theta هي تطلع omega dt يعني هي 2 باي على t ضرب dt. اوكي هون بنستعملها هاي. Okay, so therefore this integral now if I do the substitution here is going to be equal 1 على t ضرب integral between, we will see where it goes, theta 1 and theta 2 of Vp sine of theta ضرب 2 باي على t d theta. اوكي يعني حيطلع بيصير 1 على t ضرب 2 باي على t integral between theta 1 and theta 2 sine theta d theta. Okay, عفوا 1 على t over 2 pi. Sorry, this should be opposite. Okay.
بروفيسور لازم الكابيتال تي تروح مع بعض لان بصير عندنا غلط لان نحن استعملنا على التتر.
صحيح.
صح؟
Yes, yes. This means that dt لأنه we are substituting it is t على 2 pi ضرب d theta. يعني هيدا change of variable اللي لاحظته. Now what is theta 1 and theta 2? What is theta 1 and theta 2? Theta 1 is evaluated from omega t when t is what? What is the lower bound? 0. So this is equal to 0. Theta 2 هي omega t evaluated when t is equal to big T. And this is equal omega اللي هي 2 pi over t ضرب big T. So this is t over 2 عفوا ضرب t over 2. So this becomes equal to what? Let me repeat it, and I don't think you are familiar with it. Okay, so we all know where we got this from. This is the second bound, صح؟ هيدا عم طلع هيدا الباوند وهيدا الباوند. This is the bound when t is 0. So this will give me theta 1. Okay, and this is the bound when t is equal to t over 2, and this will give me theta 2, صح؟ Okay. And so this is equal to 2 pi over t times t over 2, and this is equal to pi. Okay, so the lower bound is equal to pi. Okay, is this clear?
Yes.
Okay, طيب, excellent. Okay, so okay, now we did the change of variable. Okay, and in this change of variable, my integral now is 1 over t times the integral between theta equals 0 to pi of Vp times sine theta d theta. Okay, if we look at the table of integral, what is the integral? Sorry, not here, 1 over 2 pi عفوا. This side is sorry, 1 على 2 pi. What is the integral of sine? هلا نرجع نعيدها. What is the integral of sine?
minus cosine.
Minus cosine. So this is Vp على 2 pi ضرب minus cosine theta evaluated between 0 and pi. So this is equal to Vp على 2 pi times cosine pi is what?
minus 1
minus 1 مضروبة بماينس بتصير
plus
1. Okay, and this is minus cosine 0 شو هي؟
1
1
1
مضروبة
بس
بماينس حتصير minus 1, so this is equal to Vp over pi. Okay, فإذا my signal has an average, okay, which is equal to Vp over pi, and you can use this quantity from here on. Okay, فإذا the rectified signal which traces half of the sinusoid and the average هي DC component قيمته بتساوي Vp over pi, and this is important. Okay, قيمته بتساوي Vp over pi. So this is the average value of VO when it looks like this, when it is rectifies only the positive part of the signal. Okay, حدا بده شي نعيد الانتجرال كيف we derived it؟ طيب, I will walk through it very quickly. So this is just the repeat for the integral, and then we'll draw the characteristics, the derivation. So this is 1 على t integral between 0 and t over 2 of Vp sine omega t dt plus 0. Okay, جينا عملنا replacing with theta equal 2 pi على t وقلنا انه معناتها دي theta هي 2 pi على t dt, يعني dt is equal to t على 2 pi times d theta. We plugged this in, so we said this is equal to 1 على t times the integral between theta 1 and theta 2 of Vp times sine theta times 2 pi على t d theta. And then we took the constants out, هيدول كنسلوا مع بعضهم, and then we found what theta 1 and theta 2 were. Okay? طيب, great. هلا if we look at what we call the voltage transfer characteristics of the rectifier, what do we mean by voltage transfer characteristics of the rectifier? يعني VO versus VN. إذا أنا جيت رسمت ال VN هي ال X, okay, and this is VO. كيف شكله ال VO versus VN؟ لما VN negative كيف يطلع شكله الكيرف؟ شو بيطلع ال VO؟
positive.
Let us
Zero.
put the table. When VN كان negative كان ال VO شو بيساوي؟
0
0. ولما VN كان positive شو كان ال VO بيساوي؟ هات لنرسمها بغير لون هاي.
fine
عفوا سوري. شو كان ال VO بيساوي؟ لما VN كان positive كان ال VO بيساوي V.
fine
صح؟
fine
صح, يعني equal to VN. أنا عم طلع بالنسبة لها الفاريبل. يعني عندي when x is negative y is 0, and when x is positive y equal x. صح؟ مظبوط? So if I want to draw this and assume that this is my x and this is my y, when x is negative, what is y?
0.
0
0, so my Vn is 0. And when x is positive, my y equal x. كيف يرسم y equal x line?
straight line passing through the origin
Passing through the origin, وقد ايش slope لإله هون؟
1.
1, لأنه y equals to x. فإذا the voltage transfer characteristics هي عبارة عن line passing through the origin when Vn is positive, وعبارة عن 0 when Vn is negative. كلنا we all know how to draw what is the voltage transfer characteristics for the rectifier.
yes
Okay, great. طيب, anybody has any questions?
بروفيسور انا عندي سؤال بس شوي بعيد يمكن عن شرحنا اليوم.
Yes.
اذا ما نحول من دي سي لاي سي بنعوز ترانسفورمر، بس اذا ما نحول من اي سي لدي سي ما نعوز دايود ريكتيفاير بسيركت ونعمل هيك.
For the AC to DC, بنعوز multiple circuits. The rectifier is the first of these. We will show you a chain of circuits as we go to see how the signal goes through.
اوكي ثانك يو.
We'll learn a few minutes. Okay. Yes. حدا عنده سؤال تاني؟ Okay, I think that may have been echo. طيب, thank you very much for your time today. We will meet again inshallah on
Thank you,
on a
Professor.
Friday.
Thank
Don't
you.
forget about the homework. Thank you. Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.